The Galactic Council of Greater Beings did not panic. It was beneath their dignity, their centuries of evolution, their carefully crafted genetic enhancements, and their meticulously designed social structures meant they simply reassessed situations with heightened urgency. But today they were absolutely losing their minds. "You are telling me," said High Counselor Vasil, his 6 appendages trembling despite his best efforts, "that the barrier around Sol 3 has failed? The containment system we spent 3 centuries perfecting has what? Malfunctioned." I watched from my observation post, recording everything as was my duty. My name is Tix-Vorn, Senior Galactic Historian, and I have spent my career studying the most dangerous species in the known universe. Not that anyone listened to my warnings. No, why would they? I'm just the expert who dedicated 4 lifetimes to understanding the creatures that call themselves humans. Director Faplak, head of the Containment Division, somehow managed to look even more gray than his natural coloration. "High Counselor, the barrier didn't malfunction. It was dismantled from the inside. The chamber erupted into sounds that in less dignified species might be called screaming. Silence." Vasil's voice boomed through the council chambers. "How long?" Faplak's voice quavered. "We believe the humans have been free for approximately 7 galactic standard months." I couldn't help myself. I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that echoed across the chamber and caused several counselors to shoot me venomous looks. "Something amusing, Historian Tix-Vorn?" Vasil asked, his voice dripping with the kind of condescension only an elected official can truly master. "Oh, nothing at all, High Counselor," I replied, making no attempt to hide my sarcasm. "Just that I have been warning this council for decades that containment was a temporary solution at best. The humans weren't going to stay in their little terrarium forever." "Watch your tone, Historian," High Counselor Zavla said from her hovering platform. "You are addressing the Galactic Council, and the Galactic Council is addressing catastrophe." I shot back. 7 months? They have been out there for 7 months, and we are just now finding out? Do you have any idea what they could have accomplished in that time? The silence that followed was more telling than any response. Vasil cleared his throat, a curious habit he'd picked up from studying humans too closely. "We have tracked 3 human vessels so far. Small crafts, exploratory in nature. They don't appear to be military." I snorted. "Every human is military. High Counselor, that's what you all failed to understand. They have evolved in an environment where everything was trying to kill them. Their planet tried to kill them. Their food tried to kill them. They tried to kill each other for fun. They turned warfare into an art form before they even left their atmosphere." "You are being dramatic," Counselor Pravik interjected. "They are just mammals who discovered basic technology. We have them outmatched in every conceivable way." "Do we?" I challenged, stepping forward. "Let me tell you about humans, Counselor. While your ancestors were perfecting meditation techniques to contemplate the beauty of triple sunsets, humans were figuring out how to make pointy sticks more efficient at stabbing. While the Zor were developing faster-than-light communication, humans were inventing new ways to blow each other up. The Kavarians achieved perfect societal harmony 10,000 years ago. In that same period, humans had approximately 15,000 wars. That just proves they are savages." Zavla said dismissively. "No," I replied firmly. "It proves they are survivors. Adapters. The most dangerous creature in any ecosystem isn't the strongest or the fastest. It's the one that can adapt most quickly to changing circumstances. And humans? They don't just adapt. They thrive on adversity." A nervous murmur spread through the chamber. Director Faplak cleared his throat. "There's something else. One of our border outposts sent a distress signal 2 days ago. When our security forces arrived, they found the entire station empty." "Empty?" Vasil repeated. "What do you mean empty?" "I mean every living being on that station had vanished. High Counselor, all 473 of them. The only evidence we found was this message burned into the main command console. An image appeared in the center of the chamber. Simple symbols in the human language. English. Thanks for the hospitality. We borrowed some stuff. Be back soon, smiley face. What is that symbol at the end?" Zalva asked, pointing to the smiley face. It's called a emoticon, I explained. Humans use it to convey emotion in written communication, and that particular one indicates happiness or amusement. They are happy about abducting our people? Pravik asked, genuine horror in his voice. No, I replied. They are amused by your reaction to it. You humans have a peculiar sense of humor. They particularly enjoy what they call irony. After being contained by us for decades, they are now containing some of us. They find that funny. This is no time for a cultural analysis. Vasil snapped. We need to respond immediately. Director Faplak, activate the defense grid. Counselor Pravik, issue an emergency broadcast to all systems. Counselor Zavla, prepare the evacuation protocols for our core worlds. With all due respect, High Counselor, I interrupted, those actions will only make things worse. How could preparing for an attack possibly make things worse? Vasil demanded, because humans interpret defensive actions as confirmation of hostile intent. I explained, if you activate the defense grid, they will see it as preparation for war. If you evacuate core worlds, they will assume we are gathering forces. Every defensive measure we take will be interpreted as an aggressive one. What would you suggest, historian? Faplak asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. Talk to them, I said simply. The chamber erupted in disbelieving laughter. Talk to them? Vasil repeated incredulously. The species that weaponized their own planetary satellite just to see if they could? The species that continued fighting wars even after developing nuclear weapons? The species that made entertainment out of simulated violence? You want us to just talk to them? Yes, I replied firmly. Because there's one thing about humans that's even more remarkable than their capacity for violence. Their capacity for friendship. Humans form attachments to anything. Anything. They form emotional bonds with members of other species. They form emotional bonds with inanimate objects. There are documented cases of humans risking their lives to save creatures they have known for less than a day. That's absurd. Zavla scoffed. That's humans. I corrected. Simultaneously the most terrifying and most sentimental species in the galaxy. They will weep over the death of a fictional character in a story and then design a weapon that could obliterate an entire planetary system. A nervous silence fell over the chamber. I'm not suggesting we ignore the threat. I continued, my voice softening. I'm suggesting we consider that they might not be a threat at all, at least not yet. The humans I have studied aren't conquerors by nature. They are explorers. They want to see what's out there, meet new species, exchange knowledge and culture. Yes, they are dangerous, extraordinarily so, but they are not inherently hostile. The abduction suggests otherwise, Pravik pointed out. I shook my head. Think about it. A species with their technological capabilities could have completely destroyed that outpost. Instead, they left a note saying they will be back. They didn't kill anyone. They are curious. Director Faplak stroked his facial ridges thoughtfully. The historian makes a valid point. If their intent was conquest, why announce themselves this way? Why not strike at our central worlds immediately? Because they want something else, I said. Information, probably. They want to understand us before they decide what to do with us. And what do you propose we do while they are making that decision? Vasil asked, a hint of sarcasm in his voice. I propose we send an envoy, I replied, a diplomatic mission. One person to make contact and establish communication. And who would be foolish enough to volunteer for such a mission? Zavla asked. I stood straighter, feeling the weight of my 4 lifetimes of study. I would, Counselor. I have spent more time studying humans than anyone else in the galaxy. I understand their customs, their language, their bizarre social rituals. If anyone can speak to them without triggering their more violent tendencies, it's me. The council chamber went silent again, but this time it was a thoughtful silence. Finally, Vasil spoke. The council will need to deliberate on this matter. Historian Tix-Vorn. Remain available. 3 agonizing days later, I found myself aboard a small diplomatic vessel, heading toward the coordinates where the last human ship had been detected. The council had eventually seen the wisdom in my proposal, though I suspected their acceptance had more to do with not having any better ideas than with genuine agreement. My vessel was unarmed. carrying only communication equipment, cultural databases, and enough supplies to last me a standard year. If the humans decided to destroy me, there would be nothing I could do about it. But somehow I wasn't afraid. Cautious, yes. Anxious, certainly. But not afraid. Perhaps I'd spent too long studying these bizarre creatures, but I genuinely believed they would listen before they shot. On the 7th day of my journey, the sensors detected an approaching vessel. It was unlike any human ship I'd seen in our records, sleeker, more advanced, with energy signatures that suggested technology far beyond what they should have been capable of. Unidentified vessel. Came a voice over my communication system, speaking in perfect galactic standard. This is Captain Mira Taylor of the Earth Diplomatic Corps. Please identify yourself and state your intentions. I took a deep breath and activated my transmitter. This is historian Tix-Vorn of the Galactic Council. I come alone as an envoy, seeking peaceful communication with humanity. There was a pause, longer than necessary for simple translation. A historian, the human finally replied, and I could hear something like amusement in her voice. Not a military officer or a high-ranking politician. Well, that's refreshing. Permission to dock with your vessel, historian Tix-Vorn? I hesitated only briefly. Permission granted, Captain Taylor. An hour later, I was face to face with my first live human. Captain Mira Taylor was smaller than I'd expected, with dark skin and curly black hair pulled back from her face. She wore a simple blue uniform with minimal ornamentation, and she was smiling. I'd studied human facial expressions extensively, and this one seemed genuine, a positive sign. Historian Tix, she said, extending a hand, another human custom I recognized. It's an honor to meet you. I awkwardly extended one of my upper appendages and allowed her to grasp it. Her grip was firm but not threatening. The honor is mine, Captain Taylor. I have studied your species for 4 lifetimes. 4 lifetimes? She raised her eyebrows. That's quite the commitment. I hope we have been interesting subjects. Interesting is perhaps the mildest way to put it, I replied dryly. She laughed. A bright sound that somehow put me at ease despite everything I knew about her species. Fair enough. I suppose from your perspective, we must seem rather unpredictable. That would be another mild way of putting it. I agreed. How did you dismantle our containment barrier? It was designed to be impenetrable. Taylor smiled again, but this time there was something almost predatory about it. Nothing's impenetrable, historian. Especially not to a species that spent its entire history figuring out how to get into places we weren't supposed to be. And the abductions? The 473 citizens from our border outpost. Her expression shifted to something more serious. They are all safe, I assure you. Well-fed, comfortable, and completely unharmed. We needed to understand your biology, your technology, your social structures. The quickest way to do that was direct observation. You could have asked, I pointed out, after you imprison our entire species on our home planet for decades. She raised an eyebrow. Would you have answered honestly if we had asked? I had to concede that point with a gesture of acknowledgement. Probably not. But now I'm here asking for honest communication. Will you reciprocate? Taylor studied me for a long moment. You know, when we first realized what had been done to us, that an advanced alien coalition had decided we were too dangerous to be allowed into the galactic community. Most of us wanted revenge. There were plans drawn up for war, for conquest. Humans don't take well to being caged. I felt a chill run through my body. And now, she said, her expression softening slightly, cooler heads have prevailed. But for the moment, we are willing to talk, to negotiate. We want to understand why we were contained and what it would take for us to be accepted as equals in this galactic society of yours. And if you don't like the answers, I asked, unable to keep the tension from my voice. Captain Taylor smiled again, and this time there was no mistaking the predatory edge to it. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. Historian Tix-Vorn, for everyone's sake. She gestured toward the interior of my vessel. Now, shall we begin those honest communications you mentioned? I'm particularly interested in hearing why the Galactic Council was so afraid of us that they thought imprisoning, an entire sentient species, was an acceptable course of action. As I led her into my ship's small conference area, I couldn't help but think that the Council's fear hadn't been entirely misplaced. There was something in the way this human carried herself, a confidence that bordered on arrogance, a friendliness that didn't quite mask the calculation behind her eyes. This was a predator species playing nice, for now. But perhaps that was the best we could hope for, a chance to establish understanding before the humans decided we weren't worth the effort. It's a long story, I told her as we seated ourselves. Good thing I brought snacks, she replied, pulling a colorful package from a pocket. Want some? They're called cheese puffs. Completely unhealthy, absolutely delicious. And so began the most important diplomatic mission in galactic history. With processed cheese snacks and a historian who had spent too long studying theory instead of practice. The galaxy was about to change forever, and all I could think was, I told them so. So, let me make sure I understand this correctly, Captain Taylor said, leaning back in her chair. The package of cheese puffs lay empty between us, her fingers stained orange, a detail she seemed completely unconcerned about. Your council decided to contain us because we fought too many wars, because we developed nuclear weapons, because we are, what was the phrase you used, simultaneously the most terrifying and most sentimental species in the galaxy. I shifted uncomfortably. It's more complex than that, Captain. Please call me Mira, and I'd like to hear the complexity. She gestured expansively. We have time. Those 473 hostages, research subjects, aren't going anywhere. I winced at her directness. Very well, Mira. The containment decision wasn't made lightly. It came after the Galactic Survey team spent 50 of your Earth years observing. A detail she seemed completely unconcerned about. Your council decided to contain us because we fought too many wars, because we developed nuclear weapons, because we are, what was the phrase you used, simultaneously the most terrifying and most sentimental species in the galaxy. I shifted uncomfortably. It's more complex than that, Captain. Please call me Mira, and I'd like to hear the complexity. She gestured expansively. We have time. Those 473 hostages, research subjects, aren't going anywhere. I winced at her directness. Very well, Mira. The containment decision wasn't made lightly. It came after the Galactic Survey team spent 50 of your Earth years observing. Human development? Mira commented. Creepy. She gestured for me to continue. What they saw alarmed them, not just your capacity for violence, though that was certainly concerning, but the speed of your technological advancement. Most species take thousands of years to progress from basic flight to space exploration. You did it in decades. From primitive computing to artificial intelligence in less than a century. The developmental curve was unprecedented. You were scared we'd catch up too quickly, she said flatly. The council was concerned about stability. I corrected, though her assessment wasn't entirely wrong. The galactic community has existed in relative peace for 20,000 years. Species join when they have reached a certain level of both technological advancement and social harmony. The humans had the former without the latter. Mira laughed, a sharp sound without much humor. So, we were the galactic equivalent of a child prodigy with behavioral problems, too smart for our own good, not mature enough to play with the adults. An apt analogy, I conceded. And your solution was to put us in a cage, rather than... Oh, I don't know, she said, her voice remaining casual, but I could detect the underlying anger. Introducing yourselves? Offering guidance? Welcoming us into your peaceful utopia so we could learn by example. There were advocates of that approach. I admitted I was one of them. We were outvoted. She studied me with new interest. You argued against containment? I argued that containment would only delay the inevitable, that when humans eventually broke free, and I was certain you would, you'd be far less amenable to peaceful coexistence than if we had approached you openly. Smart historian, she said with a small nod. So what happens now? Your council must have given you some parameters for this mission. I hesitated. My instructions were to establish communication and assess humanity's intentions toward the galactic community. Ah, Mira said, tapping her fingers on the table. A reconnaissance mission dressed up as diplomacy. Classic. Not entirely, I insisted. I genuinely believe in the possibility of peaceful integration. That's why I volunteered. And if I told you our intention was conquest, that we plan to subjugate every species that participated in our containment, would you report that honestly to your council, knowing it would likely result in a preemptive strike against Earth? I met her gaze steadily. Yes. She held my eyes for a long moment, then smiled. Good answer. But that's not our intention. Then what is? First, I think you should meet some people, Mira said, standing abruptly. Your ship can dock with mine, correct? I have something to show you. 3 hours later, I stood in what the humans call reception hall aboard their vessel. It was much larger than I had anticipated, with sleek design elements that spoke of advanced engineering. But what truly shocked me wasn't the ship itself. It was its occupants. The room was filled with species from across the galaxy, not as prisoners, but moving freely, engaged in conversations with humans and each other. I recognized Zor scientists discussing something animatedly with human engineers over three-dimensional projections. A group of Kavarian philosophers sat in a meditation circle with humans in similar poses. Even a few members of my own species, the Vaughn, were present, examining cultural artifacts with human anthropologists. What is all this? I asked, stunned. Mira gestured proudly around the room. This is first contact done right. These are some of the 473 abductees from your border station. Though I should mention about half of them came with us voluntarily once we explained who we were and what we wanted. Which was what exactly? Cultural exchange, said a new voice. I turned to see a tall human male approaching. His skin was lighter than Mira's, his head completely hairless, with facial features that suggested advanced age. Historian Tix-Vorn, meet Dr. Jacob Patel, our head of xenocultural studies, Mira introduced. The human extended his hand, and I shook it with slightly more confidence this time. When we realized we'd been contained, Dr. Patel explained, our first reaction was indeed anger. Some call for military action. But cooler heads argued that before we could decide how to respond, we needed to understand who had done this to us and why. We needed information. So you raided a border outpost? I said, we invited its residents to help us understand galactic society, he corrected with a smile. Some needed more convincing than others, I will admit, but once they realized we weren't going to harm them, most became quite cooperative. Cooperative enough to share classified information about Council security protocols, fleet positions, and defensive capabilities, I assume, I said dryly. Mira shrugged, unapologetic. Information flows both ways. We have shared our technology, our art, our history, even our cheese puffs. A Zor scientist approached, its translucent skin glowing with excitement. Historian Tix-Vorn, what an unexpected pleasure. Have the humans shown you their musical compositions? Absolutely fascinating harmonic structures. Nothing like our mathematical precision, of course, but the emotional resonance is quite extraordinary. Before I could respond, the Zorth had moved on, joining another conversation. You have been busy, I said to Mira. 7 months, she reminded me. Once we understood how the containment field worked, disabling it was relatively simple. We have spent the time since then learning everything we could about the galaxy that tried to imprison us. And do you know what we discovered? What? That most individual members of the species represented on your council don't actually agree with the containment policy. That the decision was made by a small group of political leaders, many of whom had never actually studied humans directly. That fear, not data, drove the decision. I couldn't argue with her assessment. It aligned too closely with my own observations of council politics. Come, Dr. Patel said, gesturing toward a doorway. There's more we'd like to show you. They led me through a series of corridors to a large command center. The technology was unlike anything I'd seen before, not just advanced, but fundamentally different in design philosophy. Galactic technology tended toward elegance and minimalism. Human technology seemed almost excessively interactive, with multiple redundant systems and contingency protocols. This is the heart of our first diplomatic vessel, the Alexandria, Mira explained. named after an ancient library on Earth that contained knowledge from many civilizations. It's very robust, I commented, noting the multiple backup systems. We like backup plans for our backup plans, Dr. Patel said with a chuckle. Another trait that alarmed your council, I imagine. We don't just adapt to adversity. We prepare for it obsessively. Is that why your ship appears to have weapon systems? I asked, gesturing to what were clearly weapons control stations, though currently unmanned. Mira didn't deny it. We came prepared for all possibilities. Would you have approached an unknown species completely defenseless? The council would not, I admitted, but they would have called it a security measure, not a weapon. Humans prefer to call things what they are, Mira said. Yes, we have weapons. No, we don't intend to use them unless attacked. Honesty seems like a young human approached, handing Mira a datapad. She studied it briefly, then nodded. Right on schedule, she said, turning to me. We have arrived at our next destination. Would you care to join us on the observation deck? Curious despite my misgivings, I followed them to a large room with transparent walls that offered a panoramic view of space. And what I saw made my respiratory system temporarily shut down. Dozens of human ships had gathered, surrounding an enormous space station under construction. The design was unlike anything in council records, a massive wheel-like structure with spokes connecting to a central hub. Ships of various sizes moved around it like insects, carrying materials, positioning components. What is this? I asked when I could breathe again. This, Mira said proudly, is Nexus Station, our proposed solution to the current diplomatic impasse. Dr. Patel stepped forward. You see, historian, we understand the Council's concerns. We are a young species. We have fought too many wars. We have developed technologies before fully understanding their implications. We are, by your standards, probably too aggressive, too curious, and too impatient. But, Mira continued, we are also extremely good at building things, at solving problems, and at bringing diverse groups together. This station is designed to be a neutral meeting ground, a place where humans and all galactic species can interact freely, exchange ideas, trade, and learn from each other. I studied the structure with new interest. A diplomatic outpost? More than that, Dr. Patel said. A cultural embassy, a trading hub, a research center. Neutral territory, governed by representatives from all participating species. Including those who contained you? I asked skeptically. Especially those, Mira confirmed. We want to prove we can be valuable members of the galactic community, but that our unique traits can be assets rather than threats. The Council will never agree to this, I said, though I wasn't entirely convinced of that myself. They might, Mira countered, when they understand the alternative. A chill ran through me, which is... She turned to face me directly. If diplomacy fails, if the Council refuses to acknowledge our right to exist freely in this galaxy, humanity will defend itself. And historian, you of all people know how good humans are at warfare. Is that a threat, Captain? I asked quietly. It's a reality, she replied, equally soft. We don't want war. We genuinely want peace, cooperation, and to join this grand galactic community. But we will not be caged again. Ever. That is non-negotiable. Dr. Patel placed a calming hand on her shoulder. What Captain Taylor means is that we hope you'll convey to your council that humanity comes with both open hands and clenched fists. We strongly prefer to use the former. Show him the final proposal, Mira suggested. Dr. Patel handed me another data pad. This contains our formal request for recognition as a free species, our proposal for Nexus Station as a diplomatic interface, and our suggested framework for gradually integrating humans into galactic society. I scanned the document quickly. It was surprisingly reasonable, acknowledging human limitations, proposing oversight mechanisms, suggesting cultural exchange programs. It even included a section on human self-regulation of potentially dangerous technologies. You have put considerable thought into this, I said, genuinely impressed. We had 7 months, Mira reminded me with a small smile, and several hundred cultural consultants to help us understand galactic norms. The Council will want a return of those consultants, I pointed out. They are free to leave any time, Dr. Patel said, though I should mention that 64 of them have formally requested asylum and wish to continue working with us. I nearly dropped the datapad. Asylum with humans? Mira laughed at my expression. Turns out not everyone finds us as terrifying as your council does. Some find our creativity refreshing, our adaptability inspiring, our cheese puffs addictive. The council will call it brainwashing. I warned. The council can speak to them directly, Dr. Patel countered. Interview them privately, without human presence. They will confirm they are here by choice. I looked back at the massive station under construction, and if the council rejects your proposal, if they demand return to containment, Mira's expression hardened. Then those weapons you noticed earlier will serve their purpose. But, historian, I truly hope it doesn't come to that. It benefits no one. Coming from a human, that statement carries a certain irony. I couldn't help but observe. Who better to recognize the futility of warfare than a species that has practiced it so extensively? Dr. Patel asked quietly. We have had our fill of it. Historian, we are ready for something different. The question is whether the galaxy is ready for us. The conversation continued for hours, delving into details of the human proposal, discussing potential council objections, exploring possible compromises. Throughout it all, I was struck by the humans' combination of pragmatism and idealism. They prepared meticulously for conflict while genuinely hoping for peace. When I finally returned to my vessel, datapad in hand, my mind was racing with all I had learned. The council had been right to fear humans, but for all the wrong reasons. It wasn't their capacity for violence that made them dangerous. It was their relentless drive to overcome obstacles. Containment hadn't been an obstacle to overcome. It had been a challenge to surmount, a puzzle to solve. And now the galaxy faced a choice. Welcome these remarkable creatures as partners or face them as adversaries. 3 weeks later, I stood once again before the Galactic Council, having delivered my report and the human proposal. The chamber buzzed with nervous energy as the councilors debated among themselves. They built an entire space station in 7 months. Councilor Zavla asked for the 3rd time, still unable to comprehend the speed of human construction. With materials they either fabricated themselves or traded for, I confirmed they are quite resourceful. And these weapons they possess, High Counselor, Vasil said grimly. You believe they could pose a genuine threat to Council forces? I believe, I said carefully, that finding out will be catastrophic for all involved. Their technology has developed in different directions than ours. The outcome of conflict will be unpredictable, and humans excel at unpredictability. You seem to have developed an admiration for these creatures, historian Counselor Pravik observed. I have developed a respect for them, I corrected. And yes, a certain admiration as well. They could have launched immediate retaliation upon breaking free. Instead, they sought to understand us first. They built a diplomatic station rather than weapons platforms. They are offering cooperation rather than demanding reparations for their containment. Or they're simply biding their time. Director Faplak suggested, learning our weaknesses before striking. Possible, I acknowledge. But my assessment, based on extensive interaction with them and analysis of their behavior, is that they genuinely desire peaceful integration, with appropriate safeguards, of course. And the 64 council citizens requesting asylum? Vasil asked sharply, what are we to make of that? That humans are more charming than we anticipated, I suggested dryly. I spoke with several of them. They are genuinely fascinated by human creativity, human unpredictability. After thousands of years of stability, some find the human approach to problem-solving refreshing. The council fell silent, weighing their options. Finally, Vasil spoke. The council will require time to consider this matter fully, but given potential consequences of rejection, we will proceed with preliminary acceptance of a human proposal. Nexus Station will be recognized as a neutral diplomatic outpost. Limited cultural and technological exchange will begin immediately. As I left the chamber, I couldn't help but smile. The galaxy was about to become a much more interesting place. More chaotic, certainly. Less predictable, definitely. But perhaps, just perhaps, better for it. Humans had proven they could break free from containment. Now they would have the chance to prove they deserve that freedom. And somehow, despite everything I knew about their violent history, I found myself believing they would succeed. After all, they'd already accomplished the most remarkable feat in galactic history. They'd made the Galactic Council of Greater Beings admit they were wrong. And they'd done it not with their feared weapons, but with cheese puffs and diplomatic proposals. In the grand cosmic tale of species evolution,